Welcome to the Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by Play Picks and the Lines, coming to you from the West Coast. Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We got a little 6-game slate here on Wednesday night, following a really big Tuesday night slate last night. In this one, we're taking a look at the Dubs going up against the Utah Jazz. The Jazz still missing a couple players. The Dubs will also be resting a bunch of guys, but we'll break all of that down here in just a minute. Nate does have his great article up on playpicks.com as well, with some best bets and player props in there for you. And as always, make sure you like and subscribe to that page. Got a couple other videos for you today, including that player props video. We'll look to continue that 5-0 streak we started last night on Tuesday night there. And if you do still need a FanDuel or DraftKings account, head to fdpicks.com or dkpicks.com and find those listings in your area, such as what we've got for tonight. Nate, let's get into it.
Yeah, the Warriors were +3 in Utah. It is creeping closer to a pick'em now, +1.5. And the money line, which was +135 for Warriors when I wrote that article, now close to even money. Total also creeping up to 224. So seems like the public is jumping all over that. And we'll look at it in a minute. There's 5 other games here on this Wednesday. Spurs are +6 at Cleveland. Darius Garland has a chance to return tonight. The other game we break down, the Bulls are -2 in Charlotte, and that total continues to rise, 236.5 right now. We do like the Bulls there more than messing with that huge total. The Raptors are -10 at the Thunder, low total at 206 there. Lakers -9 at Portland, as both teams play the second leg of a back-to-back. The only reason the Lakers are favored by that much is because Portland blew it up at the trade deadline and got blown out by the Magic last night. And then the Wolves are -9 as well at the Kings, as they play an immediate rematch there. Huge total of 235. Kings also shorthanded after unloading Buddy Hield and Halliburton at the trade deadline. So the Warriors and Jazz are two teams that we have information about, though, at this point. We know Klay Thompson will sit out for rest. We know Draymond is shut down through the All-Star break. They're used to playing without Draymond at this point, though. And the Dubs have started to get on a roll again. They've won 9 straight. They're number 5 in both offensive and defensive rating in that span. And interestingly, they've been 4-0 without Klay Thompson since his return. They're 8-4 with him, and there's some really notable splits in terms of efficiency. A 122.7 offensive rating when he sits. Points per game go up to 115.3, and the three-point percentage, 3 points higher at 38.8%. That's key against the Jazz team that over their last 15 games, mostly without Rudy Gobert, has just been awful on defense, 23rd in efficiency and 26th in opponents' three-point percentage. One of those games without Klay, the Warriors won 94-92 over the Jazz on New Year's Day. Really played at a snail's pace in that game, 82 possessions per 100. Their pace has been very slow consistently without Klay, but as I mentioned, the efficiency through the roof. And that's on both ends of the floor. They just have so much depth to throw at you. I don't mind Klay sitting at all when I'm thinking about the Warriors winning. Klay's going to be a more valuable asset towards the end of the season. They're still trying to acclimate him, but they have so much depth at this position between Gary Payton II, Jordan Poole, Damian Lee, at small forward, Otto Porter, and Jonathan Kuminga, who is coming on strong. They've just been one of the deepest teams in the league right now, and it hasn't even mattered that they're sitting 2 of their veterans, including Iguodala, and that Klay's been in and out of the lineup. Their defense is still lights out on the road. Their last 6 road games, they're 7th in defensive rating, and they're up to 7th in offensive rating, whereas before they were struggling on the road. So they've still gone under in 2 of their last 3 road games, despite playing up the 7th fastest pace. Which is kind of contrasting with that slow it down without Klay. But it is all to say that I really like the Warriors to just win this game. I mean, they've won 4 straight against the Jazz. I expect that trend to continue. The Jazz are not good. They're 7-15 against the spread since the middle of December. They're 16-25 against the spread outside the division and 10-18 against the spread at home. They have had Donnie Mitchell back for 2 games now, and they beat the Nets, who don't seem to care about playing basketball, and they had to come back from 15 to beat the Knicks. That's not inspiring me to say Utah's back where they were. So aside from taking the Warriors, I also like going under on the Jazz team total, because the only way we're going over on this game at 224 is if the Warriors have their offensive explosion. I don't see the Jazz keeping pace at all. They're very dependent on Donovan Mitchell, who averages just 23.5 points per game his last 5 against the Warriors. Again, with all that depth on the wing, all those guys are really, really good defenders. And I think they'll do a good job of holding Donnie in check and probably keeping the Jazz under 111.5, where they average, 109.5 in their last 20 games.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that more than anything. I mean, we always like Dub's defense this season for sure. Obviously when Draymond's in, we like it a lot more. But as you mentioned, that hasn't been the case for a while. I think it's interesting, this last stretch of 9 games for the Dubs, that they've won 9 in a row. This is what they want. They're winning right now with Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody both averaging combined like 20 points right now in their last 9 games. That's actually better if you even diminish that to a smaller, like last 5 games, especially because Kuminga had a huge outburst the other night and basically led the team in scoring for most of the game against the Thunder there. And so, you mentioned their depth. But like I said, this is what they want. They want it to be that Steph is averaging 22 points a game in their last 9, and they're 9-0 because of all those guys you mentioned. The depth is out of control right now. Steph at 22 a game. You've got Clay at about 19 a game, and then you've got Wiggins and Poole at 17. Porter and Kuminga both 11 and 10 points a game. So you've got 6-7 dudes in double figures. You've got 3 dudes with 9 or 8 points a game. I mean, they're winning on defense. They're winning by moving the ball and getting shots up for everybody. Steph has 2 less 3-point attempts a game since Clay came back. Probably get those back up to about 12 a game with Clay out tonight against the Jazz team that that they, as we talked about, they pick and choose who they let shoot threes, and they're probably not going to be letting Steph do it very much, but they will have a lot of other guys to contend with, including Kuminga, who's not only shooting well from deep actually, but he's the slasher and offensive playmaker, or at least offensive sort of receiver of the playmaking by cutting really in that sort of Livingston, Andre Iguodala when he was back in his peak form, that kind of role of like slashing and cutting and dishing, and it looks really, really, really good right now. As we mentioned, all of those players getting all those points for them. And then, the Jazz, they're not a very good team, and Rudy Gobert's not in. I know they won their last 3. That was a game against the Nuggets, I believe, that they were shorthanded. Seems like they're always shorthanded, but they were definitely that game. And then, the last 2 they won were against the New York teams, who are bad. Brooklyn, as we know, one of the worst teams in the league right now, just, fluttering away. And then obviously the Knicks, I won't get into it, but they give up leads way faster than, insert analogy about something that gives up things really quickly, because that's just what they do. So my point is Utah hasn't impressed me with Donnie back. He's been impressive, but once again, there's not much perimeter D in Brooklyn or on the Knicks to really handle a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who came back on a tear, including 6 assists in his last couple appearances since he's been back, as well as all of those great numbers you mentioned, close to 30 points a game with an insane usage rate as well. So he's going to go out and try to get his, but the Dubs do limit what other teams do super, super well. And, as far as the Jazz as of late, you mentioned some of the recent struggles. Not only is their, defensive rating all the way down, their pace is down to 3rd slowest as well. They failed to cover their last 8 home games against a Western Conference team. And their last 7 home games as well in that span have gone under. And honestly, in the last 2 games, it wasn't their fault it went under. They scored a ton of points against the Knicks and the Nets. Neither of those teams, held their end of the bargain on offense, and that's why you got the unders there. But I still do feel a little bit better about the under here. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel the best about the Dubs, as we mentioned, even if Clay's not in. You mentioned those splits, 4-0 without him since he's come back from injury. So it's not like they've been so reliant upon him that they can't figure out other ways to win. And they are in that 9-game winning streak, winning games by an average of about 10 points a game. And they're averaging on the road, it's about giving up 108 or so for them and scoring 118. So you're at about 226. If you do think the Jazz have any chance of scoring a decent amount, I would lean a little bit closer to the over. But, as we've talked about, this isn't a game that I'm really looking to attack the line. Honestly, neither of the games that we feel really good about today are about the total nearly as much as they're about, who's going to win. We mentioned we like Chicago in the other one, even though there's totals that's at like 235. Could be fun to play with, but just there's too much going on there. Same concept here, where I just don't trust the Jazz to score. Even without Rudy Gobert, we know their defensive rating skyrockets, but their offensive rating goes way down as well. Now, granted, they have Donnie Mitchell back, so it's at least he's a walking offensive rating in himself. That's pretty decent. But at the same time, against a team like the Dubs, who are playing defense at such an incredible clip, even when they were struggling a bit before this 9-game win streak and their defensive rating rose, it's gone right back down. It's about 107.5 in this 9-game winning streak, which is definitely good enough when your offensive rating is up about 118.
Yeah, I mean, it is about the Dubs winning right now. It's about them winning when they're underdogs. I know this might have been a miscast line, and it might correct eventually so that they're slight favorites, but they've won 4 straight when they're listed as underdogs by an average of 15.5 points per game, thanks mostly to that 42-point drubbing of Chicago, again, without Klay Thompson. But it also includes a 7-point win over Utah on January 1st. Rudy Gobert was active for that one, and it includes a win over the Suns. So these are not cupcakes. Obviously, that's why they're underdogs. But they win on the road. They're 16-9 straight up with the 3rd best defensive rating. They win with defense. Again, why we like the Jazz under there. But there are some conflicting numbers in terms of over-under for the entire total, because you don't know when the Warriors are just going to completely catch fire. And the way their bench is playing right now, it could just get out of hand in a hurry. That's why you should feel really safe betting the Warriors just to win. It's very simple. I wouldn't even take any player performance doubles for this one because they're so deep. Because Steph, would you tell me Steph's averaging 22 points per game during their win streak, and other guys, a slew of guys between 10 and 17 points per game. It's a total team effort right now. Whereas the Jazz are kind of a one-man band. It's Donnie Mitchell, and they're going to hope Bojan Bogdanovic can get hot. But without Gobert now, they were 2-8 before those two kind of cheapies against the New York teams, and their net rating is still -5 without Gobert compared to 9.4 with him. And they've disappointed all year at home. There's no real reason to expect them to snap that trend against what right now is probably the 2nd best team in the NBA.
Yeah, I think unequivocally they are the 2nd best team in the NBA, and I think no matter what you're feeling tonight, the Dubs have already shown what they can do this season in Utah against Utah with Gobert. It doesn't matter. So I'm feeling really good about them, especially as that defensive road team. They just won a game against the Spurs where they just basically played their whole G League squad, including like Kuminga and Moses Moody, and those guys are proving they're NBA players already. So the future is bright for the Dubs as they've been able to have their cake and eat it too, getting draft picks that are really contributing right away while still having their core veterans there to try to take them to the chip this year. So some good things ahead for the Dubs. I'd feel pretty good about potentially a futures bet right now, as I think that they are a team that's going to obviously contend in the Western Conference Finals. But at any rate, that's all the time we have for you in this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page, and check out those other couple videos we have for you today, including the player props video. Looking to stay super hot with you. So until we see you next, happy betting.